Hello, Illuminated Souls. I'm Bria Andrioni.
And I'm Tina Demore.
Welcome to our podcast, Shamans After Dark. Today, we're going to be continuing to talk about our Body Temple series and kind of continue our little deep dive into what does it mean to be in this body and have this kind of embodied life experience that we're having right now. And
yes,
that kind of brings me to the thought, Tina, of like moving trauma through our bodies. You know, we having this life in a body, we have experiences throughout this lifetime that can be traumatic, that can impact us in so many ways. And we just carry that forward with us, whether it's very subtle to something that was really, you know, causing PTSD symptoms and something that's super traumatic. And I just feel like our body carries and keeps track of that. You know, even scientists have shown that we pass our trauma down in our DNA to our kids, and it just carries on in our line. So, I mean, that blows my mind.
It could be 5 generations later, so say you said you had a claustrophobia, right? And I have fear of heights and you also have fear of heights. Where did that come from? So that's something that we carry in our bodies, plus, any kind of present life experiences. And with my experience in helping people with trauma, I've noticed that it doesn't have to be a huge thing that traumatizes people. It could be a child that this is an example, stubs their toe or, and it was really kind of traumatic for them. But, how we hold that in our bodies just kind of informs how we can be embodied. And like we've been talking about in our past episodes, that not being in our body, you miss life. You miss being in your, being present for your life. So how can we move through the trauma? Obviously, there's lots of treatments for trauma, but feeling unsafe in the body during those times isn't going to help you obviously be embodied and be present for your life, and you're going to miss out. So,
and I think it also it influences the things we want to do, how we want to be seen in the world. Sometimes when we're carrying trauma, we don't want to be seen at all. We don't want to be seen. We don't want to be engaged. We almost shrink and hide within ourselves because we just don't feel safe in this body that's carrying us around. And that's really impactful because then you aren't able to shine your light and be out there
to shine. Yeah. Right. I was just going to say that you're not able to shine. And, when you shine your light, I mean, I think Marianne Williamson has this beautiful, I'm going to paraphrase it. When you shine your light, you're giving permission for others to shine.
Yes.
And so, I think for people that are still hiding and they're not comfortable with shining and really being seen, there are lots of tools. There's like movement, which I love, and I know Bree, you love too. And then there's creative outlets, moving some paint around. It doesn't have to be, a finished, beautiful product. It's just the process of it, breath work.
Yeah, sometimes just moving color can be so huge, right? If you're just taking this color that's kind of representing how you're feeling and like just taking it on some paper or even like, remember finger paints when you were a kid? I loved getting my hands in some finger paints and just it was squishy and making the biggest mess possible. And I mean, why not invoke your inner child and get some finger paints? I feel like I need to get finger paints now. I've talked about this.
I used to love to play with mud.
Yes.
I loved mud. I loved getting my hands in the dirt and playing with the sticky mud. And my mother would be like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "Hi." Hi, I just had lots of fun. I made mud pies. Have some.
It's quite yummy. I used to make mud potions and like I'll put all kinds of weird stuff.
Oh, that's so you. But anyway, it's like anything that makes you feel safe and really, like we're just talking about connecting with your inner child. Yeah. That really can be so healing for trauma.
We're just doing the things that feed you in some way. It feeds you into a feeling of safety, and whether it's a physical, activity, whether it's a contemplative activity, maybe it's knitting or embroidery or like just something that where you feel like comfy and cozy in your body while you're doing it.
Yeah. Sometimes I like to make collages just in the moment of whatever is going on in my life. And it helps me get out of my thinking mind, which, obviously thinking minds like to ruminate. I think that's pretty universal.
I think my thinking mind is constantly having a narrative. It's just like blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, I hear
Yeah, you can stop
you.
anytime
But I'm
now.
doing this. Yeah, it's sort of like this tape that keeps rolling, and you have to just sort of put it aside and go, okay, I'm going to be present right now. They can keep chattering. I can't control you, but so I mean, having that self love and compassion for ourselves is so important when you're moving through trauma, and in just life in general. What does that mean, though? What is self love, and what does that mean to be in our body and see our body as a temple, as sacred? And how do things shift for us when we see our body as sacred?
I was just this when when you have those downloaded moments of spirit being like, here's the thing, um,
Uh huh.
is that also having compassion for ourselves when we're having a moment of feeling triggered, feeling like some trauma's flaring up for us, and we might be like, oh, okay, I'm trying not to experience it.
Hmm.
And we're just being able to have compassion with like, okay, I'm here, and allowing, having a space to
Yeah.
allow your body to express what it needs to, or to shake, or feel uncomfortable, to be,
To give yourself grace.
yeah, to just
Yeah.
be like, okay, it's okay. It's okay for me to have this moment and this feeling, and allow for it to
Yeah.
express and just be, so that you can then like let it, so it can
Yeah.
go, so you can let it go.
Yep. Yep. To release it.
Yeah. And that,
Yeah.
and I think it in itself is a bit of an act of self-love.
Yes, absolutely. And we were talking in our last episode about how we care for our bodies. We were talking about chronic pain, chronic illness, and how do we care about our body, not just when it's working. I'll give you a little story. I talked about how I was in a wheelchair at one point with Lyme disease, and the first time I actually had a wheelchair, I was beside myself. And I remember sitting on the front porch of my grandfather's house and watching people walk by. And I sat there, it was just sort of like pivotal moment for me that, oh my gosh, they're living in forgetfulness. They don't realize that what a gift their legs are. And here I am, I've forgotten too. And so I'm not always perfect at it. Definitely not perfect. But, I try to look at my legs now because they're fully functional, and wow, thank you for getting me through the day and not even having to think about getting up and walking. So I think that's another piece of self care and self appreciation that I've learned that the illness did teach me,
Yeah.
as hard as it was.
Yeah. I mean, I had to have surgery on my foot, and before that I had been crazy active. I was just doing so many things and I loved it. And I was at a spot where I felt really good about my where I was with my body. Like I just had found this moment of like, oh, okay, I feel strong because I've been lifting, strength training, and I was doing Zumba and dance and walking everywhere. And then my body's like, can't maintain this. And then I ended up having to have surgery. It was like 6 months of physical therapy beforehand to see if we could even do it. And then we had to have the surgery. And then that was like, a year really of recovery. And it took me more like 2 years to get back to being able to walk the way I did before. And was really hard for me to not lament what I had lost, to not be like, I
Yes.
was at this spot and I worked so hard to get there. And I really liked where I was, because I've always struggled with loving my body and having a loving relationship with myself. And
Hmm.
I finally found this space where I'm like, oh, I feel really good. I just felt healthy and strong. And I was in this place. And then my body's like, no, you can't maintain this. And
Yeah.
and to try and I kept being like, oh, I'm gonna get back to where I was. And I'm still not back to where I was. And it's like 3 years, 4 years after that. And it really taught me about learning to let go of holding on to where I used to be or where I think I want to go, and meeting myself where I am right now. Where does it, what can my body do today? Where can I meet myself in a way that honors where my body's at, and not beating myself up about where I'm not?
Yeah. I think that's wonderful because in order to really move forward, you have to let go. You can't go back. I heard myself even saying to myself, I miss who I was
Yeah.
before, but there's no way to go back there. You have to let go of that and grieve it. And it's not easy and it's uncomfortable and it hurts. But in order to move forward, you have to let that go in order to welcome in what the future is holding for you. And it's not always what you think it's going to be.
And it's such an I think when you're in that space of that struggle, right, of you're struggling to accept where you are, because it's not like you just
Hmm.
wake up and say, okay, I'm at peace with here. It takes a lot of work,
Yeah,
and
it
uncomfortable
does.
sitting with all the feelings that come up around where you're not, or where you want to be, or what you feel like you can't do, and grieving what you've lost, or instead of being able to say, okay, I'm here, I'm breathing, alive. I appreciate what my
Hmm.
body is able to do today. And, I'm going to honor that. It's really, really hard. It's so easy to say, oh, you could just do this thing, but it's really, really hard to be in that space. It took me a really long time to get to that space and feeling back to a place of being comfortable in my body. And
Yeah, yes.
I remember I have actually, so I'm thinking about this as we're talking about it. I've had so many valleys of like, oh, I'm finally in a place of where I like my body and like myself and I'm feeling good. And then spirit's like, but wait, there's more. And it
Same.
blows up in my face. And I'm like, well, can I just,
Uh-huh.
I was here for a week.
But
Could we just maybe
come
please?
on.
I just really, I don't
Yeah, I
wanna.
know. It's almost like your body and the helping spirits are like, there's another lesson. And there's this, somebody said, I can't remember who it was that I spoke to last week, but said, you just be like, another life
Yeah.
lesson. You can say it as sarcastically as you want, because sometimes the stuff is like a gift wrapped in a black bow.
Yeah.
But something you said before, Brie, about letting go and what you're able to do, and being grateful for what you can do. And I, funny enough, just posted a quote from Rumi on my page, my social media pages. If all you can do is crawl, start crawling. And I love that, because it's about what you can
Yeah.
control, what you can do, and not giving power to things that you don't have control over or that you can't do. Because if you're going to feed what you can do, then you can
Yeah.
do it.
And you can build from it. It's not like you're always going to necessarily stay in that
Yes,
space. When you start feeding the good, meeting yourself where you are, it starts giving you space to build.
that one small movement can change everything.
Yeah. You got to try. You got to try.
So
Sometimes you got to step outside of
just
there
try.
and
Yeah,
move even
yeah.
when it doesn't feel comfortable or it's not where you want to be. And trying to be able to be like, okay, I am perfect just as I am today. And I think I struggle sometimes with that word perfect, because I feel like we have these ideas of perfection, which is, it's such a myth. Nothing's ever perfect. There is no perfect moment. I mean, when we're in the moment and you feel it and it's beautiful, it's great, but it's a moment, one moment, and then it's gone and it's never recreated. It's
Yeah.
its own unique thing. But what we sometimes perceive as perfection is
Yes.
unattainable.
I have an aversion to the word perfection or perfect, and I think that the only way I can, in language, in our human language, understand it is like sort of everything aligns to work for your highest. But to think that there is a perfect anything, there's a perfect for you and there's a perfect for me, and it might not be the same
Yeah,
thing. And that's fine.
but exactly.
And that itself is perfect.
I just think
you
we
know?
sometimes get caught up in what our idea of perfect should be for ourselves. Like, I know I'm a bit of a perfectionist when I get into an art project
Hmm.
or I'm doing something. Like, I have this idea because I've built something in my mind of what I'm trying to achieve. And when it doesn't meet the standard and that in my mind or my idea of what I've set it out to be, it can be really hard. And you're like not satisfied with that, you've
Right.
actually created, and it's its own unique, beautiful thing. And Spirit has taught me a lot of lessons about letting go and understanding that sometimes the
Uh-huh.
things that we try to create and birth out into the universe have its own way it wants to be, and it isn't necessarily the idea that we had for it.
Right. It's like this picture in your mind that if you're an artist, you're like, but I really wanted this sort of red, but there doesn't seem to be a color red that I can find in this world that really expresses what I'm seeing. And you have to just let it be, or the way the design works, and I think one of the things about, this is sort of off topic, but things about being creative is that you adjust to what you did, and you're like, oh, I can work with this. This is actually kind of cool that this sort of mistake, quote unquote mistake, happened. And I think, this is really talking about perfection. We can also apply that to your body and to embodiment. There is no perfect. And finding your way back to yourself instead of wishing for perfection or yesterday or the future to happen is really more important. It's the key to being present and embodied.
Yeah, because a lot of what we see imagery wise, it's given us the idea of like, this is what the perfect ideal body looks like. It has been
Yeah,
airbrushed and
yeah.
touched up and photoshopped
Oh
and,
yeah.
all kinds of who knows what done to it. And we're not
Right.
really seeing the real image of that. And it gives us kind of this warped idea of what the perfect body should be, which doesn't exist. Each body is
No.
unique and quirky and interesting and different, and that's what makes life beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I'll share this little story that when I was a teenager, I tried my hand at modeling, and it is a nasty business. And I think I did it for a few years, and I made more money than some of my friends because, it. I worked for Pepsi. I worked for CBS Sports, and they were great experiences. But the culture is so backstabbing and competitive and judgmental. And I was offered a contract to go to New York City, and I'm like, I'm not going. I'm not doing this. I'm going to college. But it's just not something that I knew even at 17 that it wasn't going to fill me, and it was already kind of gross. This is my opinion, of
Yeah.
course, and my experience. But I mean, nobody's responsible for our happiness or our love for ourselves, and or what makes us feel beautiful. And so you have to kind of do that, and not fall into the molds that our culture has made.
Yeah. And kind of, I think self-love, when we talk about self-love, and self-love is about finding a way back to ourselves and really loving who we are as individuals, loving the body that we have as it is, on a day-to-day
Hmm.
basis, because it's different every day, and meeting ourselves where we're at. And it's really about
Yeah.
having just compassion for where we are, and not having this, even if it's a bad day, or we're compassion for our shadowy selves, because no one is perfect. We aren't all saintly
Yeah.
beings. We all have our flaws
Mm-mm.
and our struggles, and that's what makes us
Yep.
human. And here, having a human experience in a body, and some days we're well, some days we're not, some days we're up, some days we're down. Um,
Hmm.
Not every day
Yeah.
goes the way we anticipate it to. So I think, self love is about having compassion and meeting ourselves where we are, and still being able to see
Hmm.
the beauty in that, even when it's ugly,
Right.
even when it's
Right.
uncomfortable, like still being able to say, okay, this is really hard right now, but I can see my worth.
Yeah, and if any of our listeners are, struggling with that, there's a really cool tool that I've used myself. Whenever you're having like a sort of a self-depreciating thought, focus on a couple of them that are sort of ruminating, and keep a hair elastic or a hairband, nothing too tight, and snap it when you have that negative thought, and then replace it with something that you do believe. Like if you're having a thought about this is not these jeans aren't fitting me anymore, I'm so fat, or something like that, right? Replace it with a thought that feels real. I'm making good choices for me today. I'm eating good food. I'm moving my body, and my goal is to be healthy. And so it does really work. It's sort of reconditioning your brain to create new neural pathways that serve you.
Oh, it's really bringing your awareness too, that you're having this, that you're in a pattern,
Yeah,
right? It's like really bringing your, like,
right.
you're having a physical, because it's like kind of a snap on your body. You're like, wait, okay.
Yeah.
So you're
Oh,
right.
wait a second. I'm
Your
thinking
body
that
is
thought.
also like, oh, okay, wait a minute. No, we are awesome. We are, like, I've
Yeah,
done good things, and it isn't all doom and gloom and me feeling terrible about that
right,
I'm not no longer fitting in those size 10
right.
pants or whatever it is, like
Right,
it's,
right. Yeah. I don't wanna demonize the thinking mind, but, it sometimes really doesn't serve us, especially if it's echoing all these old beliefs that weren't even yours in the first place. So, yeah.
well, we're creatures of habit, I mean, it takes 30 days or more to build a new habit. So we need to be patient with ourselves. It isn't going to make
Ah,
shifts in our lives that are good for us. Even small shifts take time,
right.
and we got to have the patience, and you're not going to do it every day. And building new habits is a choice, and something
Mhm.
that takes work to actually implement.
Yeah, and I, the brain is it's plastic, and so neuroplasticity. I mean, it's sort of like, going into creating new thoughts is like going into a field that's not been touched, and kind of walking through those tall grasses. It's going to take a few trips back and forth to let get that grass to lay down, and to then be comfortable with walking across and creating that new thought, versus an old path that's been trodden so many times, but it's not serving you. So yeah, sort of like
Yeah. Well,
that.
and I think also self-love too. I mean, it isn't something that we just wake up and have for ourselves every day. Like
No.
I remember when I first really started stepping into this work and into the shamanic kind of life pathway for myself and having this as my daily spiritual practice, it really came home to me the realization that I didn't love myself. And that was like, I like
Mm,
intellectually knew it, but I didn't really know it. And then it was such an eye-opening moment of like, oh my God, wow, I don't love myself. And that's so weird because I thought in some ways that I did, but then to really see it
right.
and say, okay, and that's a daily work for me to,
Yeah.
because I grew up with stories of not enough, you know, that I was bad or this or that or didn't meet other people's expectations. And so I really realized that I was relying on other people's opinions and ideas and thoughts and people pleasing and to validate my self-worth. And that's not what it's about. It is about,
No.
us being able to see our light and all our bits, whether they're good, bad, ugly, uncomfortable, and being able to be like, okay, that's me, and I like who I am. I am a good person. I
Hmm.
am worthy. I
Yeah.
am enough. I am these things. I like who I am, and that's what it comes down to: us liking
Hmm.
ourselves, liking who we are,
Yes.
loving and saying, I am worthy of love, just as I am.
And yeah, and understanding, like, even in those times where our shadow is coming up, just understanding, okay, I know where that's coming from, and just not rejecting yourself, and not berating yourself. Just, that's where I am. That's
Yeah,
what's coming up for me. I'm going to be with that.
yeah. I'm gonna sit with it.
I also had, yeah, I also had a similar experience, Brie, where it's sort of like, I think this is, when I was a child, I would be proud of myself for getting an A or something. And, or remember I got a B. I was never really good in advanced math, like trigonometry. I had to study for like hours on a Sunday if I was having a test on Monday. And I remember came back and I was happy with the B that I got. And my dad said, well, I said, I got a B on the test I was studying for. He said, well, how come? And I just was like, I just was crestfallen. And so it's like, I think that self love and being proud of yourself and proud of what you can do and your accomplishments isn't really culturally, or in our modern culture, it's not something that's like, oh, you love yourself. I think we disempower each other. And so when we really love ourselves, it is a rebellion against that culture of this lack of not good enough. I'm never going to be good enough. There's a hierarchy. She's this and he's
Yeah.
that. And
Everyone being put in their
so
little boxes and assigned their labels
yes,
and, and
on their different levels, quote unquote. Yeah. So anyway, so we both journeyed to our helping spirits individually and asked, please show me how the relationship with our body is a reflection of ourselves. Bree, what did your helping spirits have to say?
this was really interesting. So my helping spirits showed me a lake and I was like, it was like still as glass, like practically a mirror. And I was looking into it and seeing my reflection looking back at me. And I was shown that when we like who we are with our imperfections and shadowy bits and all that complicatedness that makes us who we more easily radiate our light. We aren't worried about pleasing others. We have better boundaries in our relationships and we make choices that support ourselves and our bodies. We feel more comfortable in our skin and we see our own beauty and our own worth, and we aren't worried about other people having to validate that. You see it,
Hmm.
it is the truth that it is. But on the flip side of that, when we don't like who we are, or we feel shame or have taken on other stories about who we are and let them define us, we tend to feel small. We can have an almost self destructive relationship with our bodies, making bad choices, making things that, because we don't feel worthy of the love. So we,
Hmm.
almost hurt ourselves by getting into these unhealthy patterns. And it's harder to shine. It's harder to feel safe in our bodies when we, don't have that relationship. with ourselves and feeling
It's
that,
true.
so it was really interesting to me the way they kind of showed me this whole story.
Yeah.
How
And
about you?
to dovetail on that, they also showed me a reflection, and they had me come into this place that I go into, one of the shamanic worlds, and I was looking into this space of water, and I was shown the reflection of myself, and then I kind of like jumped in. I heard the relationship between you and your body reflects the discord or flow that your energy body contains. If there is discord, the energetics are imbalanced. If there is flow, there is alignment. Humans can project rejection onto themselves when the others disapprove, and this can add to the discord within oneself. Conversely, when one feels in the flow, that is also projected onto the body. The projections do not necessarily have to be new, but from old experiences and traumas. Healthy relationship with the body begins during childhood with experiences that aren't shaming, but emulating healthy body image and self love.
I love that. Wow.
Yeah, they are so
They
wise.
are so wise. I'm always just like, I love just sitting with it sometimes and just
Yeah, drinking it in.
drinking it in and
Yeah,
feeling like unpacking it a bit. Like, it's just,
yeah. That's a good way to think about it. Just unpacking with it, unpacking it, and thinking about it, and really how it relates to yourself and your own experience.
because it does, I mean, it definitely, I totally agree. It stems with our childhood and things that were modeled for us or things that we're told or things that we see. I mean, that's how we shape our experience of the world, right? When we're such sponges when we're
Yes.
kids, we just absorb everything. And some things that we
Yeah.
adopt that we think are our truths are not because they were given to us by somebody else. And we just kept that narrative instead of replacing it with our own truth around that issue.
All right, and children, the way the brains are structured as a child, everything's egocentric, and so everything. If somebody says something to a child that's cruel or demeaning, that child's going to take it on and internalize it because it's got to be about them. And so, if those experiences weren't positive, it's going to be your worldview if you don't heal those and look at those beliefs.
Yeah. This has been such a juicy topic to sit with and
Yeah, it
explore over.
has.
And I know we're going to be getting kind of wrapping up this topic in our next episode. But we do have another journey prompt, which you can find on our website at www.shamansafterdark.com. And that prompt is, what is your relationship with your body and how does it impact your relationship with yourself? If you have a shamanic practice, you know how to do a shamanic journey, and want to explore that issue, go ahead. You can find it on the website, and we would love to hear from you if you want to share or just have any feedback on whether you're
We would
enjoying
love
all
that.
these,
Yeah.
journey prompts and ideas to kind of explore these topics that we bring up and chat about. We hope that you're going to join us next week where we're going to be wrapping up our body temple discussion, and Tina's going to be taking us on a guided meditation to help build relationship with your body temple.
Yes. Until next time, keep shining your light.